Good morning as we go to the Chitas of today. Today is Tuesday. We're holding the third reading in the portion of Miketz. We are holding in the book of Genesis, chapter 41, verse 39. Said to Yosef, since God has let you know all this, as Kol Zeis, a Novim v'chacham kamecha, there's no one more understanding and wise as you. Called him a Chabadnik, Chacham v'Novin. Now she says to seek understanding and wise men, as you said, we will not be able to find anyone like you in this whole land. Atatiel Basi, you're going to be appointed over my house. And through your mouth, your command, all the people will be nourished. Rakakise, besides my throne, Egdomimach is greater than you. Now she says, Yishak, as the uncle is translated, Yitzazen, will be nourished, shall be nourished. All my people's needs will come through you. Similarly, as it says, Ben Meshek Basi, it says, with the steward, the leader of my house. So that's the word Yishak over here. Rakakise, that they call me king. Kisei, when you say the king, the throne, the term denoting kingship, like to make his throne greater than the throne of the Lord. Said to Yosef, look, I've appointed you the entire land of Egypt. Now she says, Nesatid, now she said means manisi, as the uncle is translated, I've appointed you. It's nevertheless an expression of placing, like I place you. Wherever, whether for greatness or for lowliness, the word nesina is appropriate. Yosef Pari took off his ring. Mayal Yodei from his hand. He put it on the hand of Yosef. And he clothed him big day sheish. He gave him fine linen. And he placed a golden chain around his neck. Now she says the giving the king's ring is a sign that one whom is given that he's second to him in greatness. Big day sheish, in the term of the value of Egypt, it's a very expensive kind of clothes. Revid is a chain because it consists of links placed in a row. It's called a revid, a chain. And he had him ride on this chariot. Merkeves HaMishnah in the chariot of the second rank, Ashaloi, which he had. Yikul Afanav, they would call in front of him, Avrech, this is the king's patron, and Nasanu Akalaris Mitzrayim, and he's appointed over the whole land of Egypt. Now she said this one second to this chariot, which is goes next to him. Air Force number 2. Avrech, this is the patron, the king, is in Aramaic, it's called the king Avrech. The partners, as it brought of the Gemara, Herod Osin to the king, Recha, the son of a king. So Rashi explains that the word Avrech is over here explained as a second in command. Verse number 44, Yosef and Yaakov said to Yosef, Ani Pharaoh, I am Pharaoh. Besides me, no one will have lift his hand or his foot in the entire land of Egypt. Now she says, I have the power to enact a decree upon my kingdom, and I decree that no one shall raise his hand. That's my power. Without your permission. Another interpretation, I shall be king, and besides you is a parallel to only one with the throne. Meaning, although I give you the power, exclusive power, to raise your hand and foot, as explained below, I am still the supreme ruler. Don't forget who's king. As the Tigrim renders, no sham shall raise his hand to bear arms, or his foot to ride a horse, without your permission. And Pharaoh called Yosef Tzafnas Paner. And he gave him Osnas, the daughter of Potiphar, who was a governor, the governor, namely Isha, for a wife. And Yosef went forth over the land of Egypt. What is that meaning? What's the meaning? Why he gave him that name? He who explains hidden things. Tzafnas, paneach, tzafnas. He sees the hidden. Paneach has no parallel in Torah. We don't find the word paneach anywhere else in the Tanakh. Potifera, he is Potiphar, but he was called Potifera because he became immaculated since he desired Joseph's homosexual relationship. So he had immoral, just like his wife wanted to have a relationship with Joseph, he also wanted to have a relation with Joseph. They were very immoral in the land of Egypt. The Medrash says that the Rashi doesn't bring it down because not Pshutus Mikra, that the Medrash says Asnat was the daughter of Dinah that was given over, that was adopted by Potiphar because he didn't have any children. But according to the simple meaning, is Potiphar's wife had a daughter, Asnas, and he married the daughter of Potiphar. Yesa ben Shleshim Shana, Yesha was 30 years before when he stood before Pharaoh. Melech Mitzrayim. 30 years, so he went there at 17 years old, and this is 12 years later. Yesa went down before Pharaoh. He traveled throughout the land of Egypt. And then in the 7 years of plenty, inhabitants of the land gathered the food by handful. It's handful of handful, hand by hand, they were storing it. And they collected the food for 7 years that was in the land of Egypt. And he placed food in the cities, the food of the field surrounding the cities, he put within it. Rashi says because each land preserved its own produce, and they were put into grains, some of the soil and of the soil of the place, and preserved the grain and prevented it from decaying. So not only he figured out a way to store the food, to collect the food, but he also had a way to make sure that the food, whatever they were storing, the grain they were storing, would not get ruined. And Yosef gathered grain like the sand of the sea, because it was gathered an unbelievable amount of grain. There was so much food that was collected that they couldn't imagine how much food it was. She says until one counted, stopped counting. Because there was no number. Over here, key is because verse number 50. But Yosef had 2 children. Before the year of the famine came. Which the Asnas, the daughter of Potiphar, had for him. From here we learned, just like in the flood, that in a time of hunger, a person is not allowed to have any marital relationships. And Yosef killed his oldest son, Menashe, because God has caused me to forget all my toil. Let's call Beisi Avi in my father's home. Shema Sheni, and the second son he called Ephraim, because God had made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. And that completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day, and we are going to the 4th chapter of Tanya. So the Alter Rebbe explained that there is in every nefesh, in every soul, the Esses and they are nishtalshel, they come from Sfiras Elyonos, from the Holy Spirits, the holy Sfirot that are in the upper worlds. So you have 4 worlds, as it brought on Kabbalah. We're going to learn it as we learn Tanya. We have 4 worlds: the world of emanation, the world of creation, the world of formation, and the world of action. In each of these worlds, and even the world of action, we call Asiya, is still spiritual, because this is ultimately the physical world. That's Asiya of the spiritual part of the world of action. Everybody's neshama comes from one of these worlds. Whether you're tzaddikim that come from the world of Bria, the neshamas come from the world of Bria, and certain neshamas, neshama Moshe Rabbeinu comes from the world of Atzilus. Generally, you come from the world of Bria, or from the lower worlds. Ultimately, you can come from the world of Asiyah. And if your neshama comes from the world of Asiyah, for example, and that's why Alter Rebbe says this generation, in general, the world is full of the concept of action because our neshamas come from the world of action. And it depends which sphera you come from. Now you're made up of all spheres, but there's certain spheres that you come from. You're more either chesed or gevura in general. That's what the Gemara says. You're either more the concept of come from the attribute of chesed, in a shama emanates from that sphera, or you come from the sphera of gevura, from the sphera of severity, which is that's where your neshama stems from. Even though you have all the 10 spheres, but there's something that's more connected to you. Now the Alter Rebbe goes a next step. So the Alter Rebbe started off, as we learned this, that our neshama has within it 3 concepts, basically basic, even though many have many concepts, but it has basic 3 concepts. Number 1 is a chelek elakam mal mamish. Your neshama, my neshama, is a part of God, and that is something that is the essence of the neshama. Then the neshama comes into levushim, esespheres, 10 manifestations, and now we come to the levusha neshama, to the garments of the neshama. So we have 3 concepts basically: etzem neshama, koiches neshama, the essence of the soul, chelik elakam mal mamish, a part of God. We have the koiches nefesh, the powers of the soul, which is the essence spheres, the 10 manifestations. And now you come to the 3rd part, and that is levusha neshama, the garments of the soul. And it's important to know that all these 3 things are needed, and they are important to your soul in different concepts in your life. Now the Alter Rebbe says levusha neshama, explains levusha, which is very important because this is something that you have free choice in the levusha, what kind of garment to wear. Your etzem and neshama, you don't have any power, and even in koiches hanefesh, what your neshama comes from, you don't have power to change that per se. If you're chesed more, then that's the way you're going to express yourself throughout your life. But the levusha neshama, now we're going to come to the garments, the way you garment yourself, the way you portray yourself in an aspect of a vessel, that is totally in your power, and it could be changed. And you can some days wear this garment, and some days wear that garment, or you can get rid of your garments and you can put on totally new garments, etc. So that's why it's important to know the levusha nefesh, the garments of the soul. In addition to the 10 faculties, which were discussed in chapter 3, the koiches hanefesh, the powers of the soul, every divine soul has 3 garments. So the soul possesses 3 auxiliary powers, which are the instruments of expression. That's the word garments, like garments. They can be donned or shed as at will. So even though you express yourself you can change that. That is up to you to change. That means even if you have a soul of gevura, your koyach is more gevura, but you can put on a garment of chesed. You can be able to channel your gevura through chesed. That's your choice. Not your choice to change your koyach hanefesh, but your choice to change the way you want to express it. That's the famous example that's given of Shammai, who was brought down a chassidus that his attribute of his neshama was gevura, but nevertheless he said, "Makabel is called Adam b'sever panim yafis." You are always to put on a garment of showing a happy face. So even though my tchunas hanefesh, the way my soul, the koiches, my powers of my soul is more gevura, severity and strength, but I'm going to put on a garment of a happy face. And that's my choice. I don't have to do that, but I want to do that. And I want to put on this garment of happiness. And that's important that I can change that. I can change that in a second. So when the soul utilizes any of the three powers, it is clothed in them. When it does not use them, it's divested of them. That's it. So if I just want to express my koyach, I can do that. And the truth is that either whether my koyach is chesed or gevura, if I don't garment it, it's going to not be good. It's going to ultimately be bad. And that's it's important to the garments are extremely important to us. Also, just as garments give expression to the wearer's beauty and importance, so too, when the soul dons and utilizes these garments, its intellect and emotion find expression. And that's important. So it's important for me to be able to garment myself for you. So maybe even my chesed, which I'm unbelievably kind, if I'm not going to garment it, it's going to hurt you. It's not going to be good chesed to you, even though it's my expression of chesed. If I don't put on a garment, so the garment is for you. And that's what's important of this garments, the way I portray myself to you. And the way ultimately I'm going to give something to you. And that's the garment I'm going to wear. Which are three garments are in general thought, speech, and action. Shatayag mitzvah Torah, which expresses the 613 commandments. The Rebbe goes now to explain how the divine soul expresses itself through these garments. When a person actively fulfills all the precepts which require physical action, when he puts on tefillin, fulfills the commandment of tzitzis, lights Shabbos candles, tonight lights the menorah, with dibur, and when he speaks, that his speech he uses for the concept of Torah of 630 commandments and the laws governing the fulfillment. Meaning, the person's speech is immersed in Torah study. He uses his speech mainly for Torah, if he can do that. The tractate, for example, the tractate of Bracha dealt with the commandments and laws of blessings. Tractate of the Shabbos deal with the commandments and laws of Shabbos. He learns Gemara Shabbos. He learns Gemara Brachas. Machshava, when he uses his power of thought, he comprehends all that he's capable of understanding of Pardes, of the 4 levels of the Torah. Shat Remesh Dush. The word Pardes, which literally means an orchard, that he is here used as an acronym for the 4 Hebrew words of Pshat, which is a plain sense meaning of the verse, Rem Drush, which is the intimation of the verse, Drush, which is the homiletical explanation of the verse, and Seid, which is the esoteric meaning of the verse. The 4 levels of scriptural interpretation. So you can all have Pshat, Rem, and Drush, Seid, as we'll learn later in Tanya, that really the Neshama came down to learn all these levels. So you have to learn Torah in all levels of it. You have to make like a beautiful orchard. You have to make a beautiful garden that has many different kinds of fruits and vegetation. And that's the beauty of Torah, that has many ways of learning things. It's not only one concept. So the way you use a seichel is that in my machshava, dibur and maisa, that ultimately klalos tayag every nafshay, then all his soul, 613 organs, right? Because the soul ultimately comes into the body, which has, according to Torah, 365 sinews and 248 limbs. It's 365 organs of the body. So the body becomes, the maisa becomes infused, becomes the garment to the soul. The dust of the human body consists of 248 organs and 365 blood vessels corresponding to the total 248 positive commandments, right? Gemara says this, 365 negative commandments. So it's 613 in all. The soul similarly comprised of 613 organs, the spiritual counterpart of the 630 bodily organs. Each organ corresponding to a specific commandment, the 613 commandments. And that's why the truth is it's important that Ebbe asked that everybody should learn the 613 commandments. We should know the 613 commandments. And we should know it that Rambam brings out the 613 commandments. He characterized them. And he says what the meaning of it is. So we can know what are the 613. We need to know what the Eibishter gave us 613 commandments. He didn't give us more, he didn't give us less. He gave us exactly 613 commandments, because in essence, the Eibishter wanted that the spiritual counterpart would come into a spirit in a physical vessel, in one of the 613 commandments. That's why we're begging for Mashiach, because we cannot do 613 commandments today. A lot of these commandments are incapable of doing today. We don't have Beis Hamikdash, which a lot of the commandments is in the Beis Hamikdash. We don't have a Malchus David. We don't have a kingship in our midst. It's missing a lot of commandments. We don't have the way Eretz Yisrael needs to be. So in its ultimate way, and therefore there's a lot of commandments that are not even totally today possible to do in Eretz Yisrael, like Yovel and the Jubilee, the of Jubilee, even Truma Mises, according to many, only rabbinical today. So we know that we need to bring Mashiach to be able to push it, have the spiritual and physical counterpart that they can be able to come together, that the vessel and the So even though the of these 613 commandments, the light of these, the energy of these is still here, that's where you can learn Torah, which is a way of bringing down this concept in a time where we cannot do it. That's why that's the power of learning Torah. The Gemara says, the Eibush says, when you learn Torah, I'll count as if you did it. So that's why we should learn the whole Torah. And we do, Baruch Hashem, we learn the whole Torah every year. So in essence, we do accomplish the 613 commandments in some way. But still, we want to bring it down into a real physical way, because then we connect the oil and the lavush. We connect the oil, the energy, and the vessel that come together. And that will be the ultimate concept. And therefore, we're striving for that ultimate concept. So each organ of the soul is related to a commandment. Note the Alter Rebbe emphasizes the word all the precepts which require physical action, expounded in the 613 commandment, all that he's capable of understanding. Should his garments fail to include all 613 commandments, he has omitted one specific commandment. Then the corresponding organ of the soul will remain befret of its mitzvah garment. So we need to know, it's important that each and every one of us know the 630 commandments. We should learn it, because then, at least, even though we cannot do it physically, by learning the 630 commandments, you're bringing down the in myself. I'm connecting the of my neshama, which has 613 lights, to the mitzvah by learning the commandment, and mitzvah by doing the commandment. And thus we see in general sense how fulfillment of all commandments with one's thought, speech, and action clothes the entire soul in a 613 commandment to the Torah. So the Eibishter made the neshama with koiches hanefesh, esesvidus, 10 koiches, but then the Eibishter put these koiches that it needs to come into a vessel. How are you going to bring it down to a vessel? And that's the 630 commandments. That this koiches hanefesh, svidus, which is oiris haneshama, which is the light of the soul, can come into a vessel. And that light needs to come in to 613 vessels, and through the three garments of thought, speech, and action. And that's how you take your koiches hanefesh. That's how you take your nefesh, which has 10 manifestations, and bring it into a vessel, or a kli, a vessel. And that goes through this garment, a machshava, dibur, ma'aseh. That's why chas v'shalom, we can have a neshama and not do a mitzvah, chas v'shalom. God forbid. The neshama is still there. The oil is still there. The oil has not gone away. The neshama, the soul that you gave me is pure. So the soul is still there, but it has no vessel. It has no capability to come into anywhere. And therefore, if I'm not using out my machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh, I'm not going to be thinking Torah. I'm not going to be speaking Torah. I'm not going to ultimately do the mitzvah. I am going to miss the whole point of why I need this of why the Eibishter gave me this The will stay an but that's not something that I have done. That's something that God has given me as a gift. I say, Moidani lefanecha zayta bi nishmasi. So the Eibishter has given me a neshama. That light was given to me. Now, what do I do with this light? What do I do with this neshama? And that's why it's important to lavush a neshama, because chas v'shalom, if I don't put on these lavushim, if I don't start thinking Torah, if I don't start thinking holiness, then I'll never think holiness. That doesn't say that I don't have a neshama. Yohanim have a neshama. But I pasha don't have machshava is thought. Machshava, thought. Machshava, thought. dibur, speech, action. Learn these three things, very important, because those are your levushim, the way you think, the way you speak, the way you act. And if you don't have these three levushim, these three garments, then you'll never do anything. This will never come into a vessel. This needs to have these levushim. This needs these garments. And the only one who can give these garments is me. Because that's my free choice. I can think Torah, I can think Nanish, I can think anything I want. I can speak good, I could say words of goodness, and I could not. And I can do an action or not. So that is totally in my control. I have no control of my neshama, really. My neshama is given to me as a gift. And surely the way my neshama, the essence of my neshama, whether it's a chesed, a gevurah, or it's wisdom, that is not up to me. That was given to me. And now the levushim is up to me. That's why it's called a levush, because I can put it on and I cannot put it on. I can put on a beautiful garment. I can put on a cheap garment. I can do whatever I want to do. And that's my free choice. And that's what's important. Thus we see, in general sense, how fulfillment of all commandments with one's thought, speech, and action clothes an entire soul, 603 commandments of the Torah. And therefore also, the way I do a mitzvah is my levush. I could do a mitzvah with joy, and I could do a mitzvah in sadness. I can be excited about something. I can be depressed. That is my levush. Nobody can tell me what to do. I can tell you, I can explain you the beauty of this levush, the beauty of this garment, but it's up to you, or it's up to me to put on that garment. Because that's my free choice. The way I think is my free choice. Ain't they saying Shabbos? I think the way I want to think. You can't tell me the way I should think. You can't tell me what to say. And ultimately, nobody should tell you what to do either. Those three garments should be your free choice. And hopefully, you'll choose the right garments. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to specify which components of the soul are clothed in which particular garment. The Alter Rebbe it's very important to him, the concept of levushim, because again, it's important to him, the concept of levushim, because levushim is what you are, is really your choice. And therefore, it's important to know where every levush needs to be. You need to know which garment needs to be used at this present time. Ratis, if you want to go specific, like the Alter Rebbe goes, I'm going to explain to you specifically. When it comes to the intellect, that goes into the garment of your thought. That's important. The way you learn is important. It's important the garment that you wear when you go to learn, when you go to study, the way your mind is ready for learning, the way your mind is already framed in the way you want to learn it. Do you want to learn the subject in humility? Do you want to learn the subject in egotistically? Are you critical in your learning? Are you simple in your learning? What garment are you wearing? What is the garment of your thought at that present time? Are you focused or are you busy? Your mind is busy. So therefore, your garment of thought is busy. It's not capable of absorbing the knowledge because you're busy. So therefore, it's important to clothe the thought. You want to learn Torah? Think about the levush that you're going to put on at this present moment. What is the garment of thought you're going to put on? That's why there's achana. That's why you'll learn in halacha. There's achana, preparation for a mitzvah. There's not just the mitzvah. Achana mitzvah, the preparation. What is the garment you're going to put on when you're going to do this mitzvah? What is it? I'm using the word garment. You can use any kind of word you want to use. Over here, the Alter Rebbe is using the word garment. So the word levushim over here is the clothes I'm going to put on. What is the garment I'm going to put on when I'm going to go to learn this concept? Which are clothed the comprehension of the Torah, which comprehend the 4 levels of the pardes, which I said before, the 4 levels of the orchard, simple meaning, homiletic meaning, etc., to the extent of his mental capacity. V'sheidish nafshel amayla, in his root of the soul. So therefore, it's important. One's mental capacity determines how much he may understand. You can't understand like somebody else. I can understand like you understand. You understand like I do. Every person has their understanding. Every person has their machshava. The root, and really his machshava is also connected to the root, determining the area of Torah for which you will have a greater aptitude. For example, one whose soul is related to the level of pshat is more likely to comprehend the state word meaning of the word of Torah. Some people, it's very hard for them to understand Kabbalah. It's not their story. It's not their understanding, and they cannot change it. It's very hard. Truth is, in the three garments itself, there's certain garments that are easier to change than the other garments. This action and speech is much easier than machshava, because your machshava is closer to your nefesh. Your machshava is more spiritual than in your speech, and even more spiritual than your action. That's why machshava is the hardest thing to work on. It's the most difficult garment to work on. Because and that's why I say ein machshava same Shabbos. We could all do the same thing. In the physical action, we all could do the same thing. So we all light the Shabbos candle. We all light tonight the Hanukkah candle. What everybody's thinking when he's doing that lighting of the candle, everybody's thinking something else. And everybody could be thinking either holy things in a different way, and ultimately the opposite of holy things in a different way. So therefore, it's very important. Maybe the most closest concept to a person is his machshava, and that's where he needs to really work on to make sure that he has the correct machshava. And not to want somebody else's machshava, but really to every person machshava is going to be different. So a soul related to remez will develop its effective implied meaning, underlining the words, so on. When a person comprehends Torah to the extent of his mental capacity, then Chabad components of his soul are clothed in the garment of thought of Torah, and thought that is related to Torah. So every person needs to know his mental capacity, what is capable mentally to have a comprehension in, and then work on that. Don't try to do other things. Try to focus on those things and become more and more comprehended in your mind, to use your mind out for those things, for those levels of Torah. And then you have midas, namely the fear and love of the Almighty, together with the offshoots and ramification, are enclosed in the fulfillment of commandments. And then we have the concept of midas. And that's going to be, what's going to be the clothes of these midas? They're going to be clothed in the physical actions of Maisa b'Maisa u'b'dibur, in the speech and in action. Shutal Torah keneged kulam, which is equivalent, the learning of Torah, which is equivalent to all commandments. So the Alter Rebbe previous statement that comprehending the Torah soul's faculty of intellect clothes itself in thought requires no further elaboration. It goes without saying that the intellect can comprehend Torah only through the vehicle of thought. Now he says something more. In the latter state, however, that the midas clothed to fulfill the commandments of deeds or in words require further application. What connection do midas, fear, and love have to do with action and speech? The seat of emotion is in the heart. How do they come clothe themselves in action when they are which one don't tefillin? Don't need tefillin, for example, or speech when one uses his mouth, such as a Torah study. In answer to that question, the Alter Rebbe explains that the completeness of the performance of commandments demand love and fear of God. This is another important thing. Ultimately, if we want to do a mitzvah correctly, if we want to learn Torah with speech correctly, one can bring to the fulfillment of the commandments a fullness generated by vitality and depth of feeling only when he's imbued with fear and love of the Almighty. And that's when you do the mitzvah, that's when your lavush comes a real lavush to your nefesh. So if I do a mitzvah just out of rote, not out of avas Hashem and yidas Hashem, I am not garmenting my soul. I'm doing the mitzvah, which is something in that too. You should. That's why it says do a mitzvah shalei l'shma. That's shalei l'shma. I'm doing the mitzvah shalei l'shma. I should do the mitzvah whether I have avas Hashem and yidas Hashem. But if I want to garment the mitzvah with my neshama, I need to have avas Hashem. I need to create an emotional experience to this mitzvah. I need to create an emotional. That's when it becomes a garment to my neshama. In the Alter Rebbe words, Kiava he shadish kol mitzvah mitzvah. Because as the Gemara says, that what is the root of all mitzvahs, positive commandments, is Ava. So Ava is the oir, the mitzvah is the vessel for that Ava. Eibishter rots, that's what we say the expression, rotzakot baruch hu zakes, the Eibishter love you, lefichach hibulem teira mitzvahs. So the Eibishter said, I love you, I gave you a mitzvah. That's why I gave you a mitzvah. I gave you, because I love you. Every mitzvah I do, I should feel the Av of the Eibishter. That's only if I can create an Ava to the mitzvah. If I don't create an Ava to the mitzvah, how do I express this Ava? Then the mitzvah doesn't become a lavush, doesn't become a garment for this Ava, because the mitzvah is not done with Ava. Again, do the mitzvah nevertheless, because the mitzvah is a command of God. The Ratzon that goes even higher than Ava, it goes to the Ratzon of the Eibishter. But nevertheless, what was the Eibishter's Ratzon? What was the Eibishter's will? Is he had a love for the world, and therefore he asked to do the mitzvah. So the truth is, again, I need to. That's why it takes Aveda. Do the mitzvah without Ava takes no Aveda. Do the mitzvah. By taking fun. And that's what we know. By taking fun means let's keep on trucking. So even though I know that ultimately we should do every mitzvah, whether we have Avos Hashem or not, but as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain later, that I want the mitzvah, I don't only want the mitzvah, I want the mitzvah to fly. I want the mitzvah to reach up, to use it to accomplish its ultimate purpose. And that gives, like the Alter Rebbe is explaining, that's like the wings of the bird. It gives the mitzvah to elevate itself. It gives the mitzvah to fly. It gives the mitzvah its total powers, its total component, to give the mitzvah everything that it needs. Because it's a real garment for the mitzvah. When I create the right garment and I do everything the way then the garment and the light come together and and everything works and everything flies. Everything is elevated. And that's what we should do it. Even though, again, if you cannot do it, do the mitzvah. Because ultimately, as it says, the Gemara promises you, by doing it for the not right reason, you'll ultimately do it for the right reason. If you're not going to do it at all, you'll never come to do anything. So, without it, it doesn't have true substance. It doesn't have true substance. We need to give it substance. So you have the mitzvah, we need to give it its neshama. We need to give it its oil. We need to give it its light. You have the mitzvah, you need to connect the light of the mitzvah, the substance, the neshama of the mitzvah, which is the ava and the yira, the ava and the awe of this mitzvah. Because one fulfills them in truth. He loves the Eibishter. The chafetz, the dafka, it's self-understood that the person understands that every mitzvah connects to the Eibishter, the emes, with truth. The and you cannot truly cleave to God unless you do the mitzvah. So the Eibishter says it gave you something to connect to him. And since we want to connect him, be'emes, in truth, and whether we know it or not, we want to, because we have an neshama, we have the earth. The earth is there. The earth wants to connect to its source. That's what the earth wants to do. So if the earth wants to truthfully connect to its source, that's what the earth always wanted to do. So now when we do connect the earth to its source, now you have the whole purpose of the earth. That's the emes. That is the truth. Sometimes it takes us a long time to know the truth and to reveal the truth. So the only way we can truly reveal something that is emes is if we do it ba'ava and b'yira, when we do something with awe and with love, that reveals what the truth is. That I truly wanted to do it. That I truly wanted to have this relationship with God. Thus, one's love of God and desire to cleave to Him dictated that he observe the commandments. Why is it possible to cleave to God only by fulfillment of the commandments? Because the Zohar writes that the commandments are the 248 of the organs of the king. You should realize that the mitzvah is not only the Gashmi part of the mitzvah, the physical part of the mitzvah, but actually the mitzvah is God. It's part of God, so to say, of God, the king of the universe. The Zohar gives an analogy. So God doesn't have any limbs, right? As it were, is explained elsewhere. So just as each of the organ of a human being is a vessel for a particular soul power that clothes itself in it, meaning the eye is a vessel for the power of sight, and the ear for the power of hearing, and so on, so too each commandment is a vessel for a specific aspect of God's will. The Eibishter, as he said, had a will to have a world. And every mitzvah is the Eibishter's will. This is God's will. Why is it God's will? I don't know. But the Zohar says that the will of the Eibishter, which clothes itself in a particular commandment. So the Eibishter, just like we have 248 limbs, the Eibishter has 248 limbs, so to say, and then that's an analogy. Just like our neshama comes into 248 limbs, so to the Eibishter's Ratzon comes into 248 limbs. Each commandment expresses not only the supernal will that a specific act be carried out, but also the particulars of its observance, because that's true will. When I tell you I need something from you, I tell you what I need from you. The Eibishter God didn't keep any secrets. He told you exactly what he needed. So he told you which mitzvah, no secrets. And the Eibishter told you all the particulars. As we know, the Gemara says, Talmud says that when the Eibishter gave a mitzvah on Mount Sinai, he gave Kalal Seyin, Uprate Seyim. He gave the general, put on tefillin, which is a pasuk in the Torah. You shall bind it on your head and you shall put it on your arm. And then he gave the particulars of this mitzvah. That each and every one of this mitzvah has a pratis, particulars of the particulars. And there's a lot of halachas in this mitzvah. And so too in every mitzvah that the Eibishter gave. And to be able to do a mitzvah in truth, we need to do the mitzvah kilchasa. Because if you're missing one aspect in the mitzvah, then you haven't done really the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You haven't completed the will. You have to do God's will. It follows then that the love of God clothes or expresses itself in one's performance of 240 positive commandments is the root and the life force which leads one to observe them with totality of one's being. For when one loves God and desires to cleave to Him, he will perform His commandments as he would perform the task to a dear friend, with delight, zest, and all of his being. And then you have the concept of awe, fear of God, which is the 365 prohibited commandments. For he, God-fearing person, will fear to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings. Holy One, blessed be, by acting in defiance to His will. He will therefore refrain from anything that God forbade. At this level, the word fear is taken simply sent trepidation before the severeness of God's command. But we know that Alter Rebbe demanded ultimately that we go to the higher level of fear, or a deeper level of fear, which is to feel ashamed before God's greatness. That's awe of God. I stand in the awe of God. Like the Alter Rebbe will explain later, when a great person, when a simple person is asked by a king to do him a favor, when the king asks for a simple person to do a favor, creates two things. First of all, creates an awe to the king, and it creates a love to the king. So we come as simple people and asked by a God who's infinite to do a mitzvah, we'd be in awe, total in awe of that God has asked us to do a mitzvah, and we'd be totally in love that God has asked me to do this mitzvah. So therefore, we ultimately need to reach up to level. Now we're afraid of God's punishment to do the mitzvah, but we are in awe of God. We are ashamed that a simple, lowly nothing, that God who is infinite can ask a simple nothing to do for him a teva. To do for him a teva. As Rashi says, please. In Rashi translates, if you're following commandment, please follow my commandments. I'm asking Pasha a teva. I'm asking you a favor. So we need a concept of a simple fear. God's not asking you favors. God's telling you, if you don't follow the commandments, I'm going to punish you. It's good to be boss. In a higher level of fear is the concept of the Eibishter's Pasha asking you a favor. I don't need what the Eibishter, God needs you to do the mitzvah. If you're not going to do the mitzvah, he's going to basically be out of business. But no, the Eibishter says, the Eibishter wants this mitzvah from you. He's asking of you. And you should be in awe that God, as I said, is infinite, ain't safe, can ask a finite, the most finite entity in the world, me, to do for him a mitzvah. If I would never do a negative, why would I do a negative to something that I'm in awe of? I would never ever do something negative if I was truly in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And namely, any abominable hating thing that God hates. And klippus is which I don't have to go to the mitzvahs. I don't have to go to an Aveda. We know that God is abomination. Even the concept of a clip is an abomination. Even Sitra Achra is abomination. The other side, which is the opposite of holiness. By God, anything that's unholy is an abomination. Why would I want to connect to something that's an abomination to God? That draws its nurture from the man below in this world. And they hold on him so that they're able to derive nurture of life through him, through the violation of 613 commandments. So therefore, we have to realize by us doing an Aveda, whether machshava, dibra, maisa, doing a sin, whether thought, speech, and action, we're giving life force to evil. When a person transgresses a prohibited commandment, God forbid, provides a clip of this covering with additional strength and vitality. Sin klippus and sitra achras are entities which conceal godliness and holiness, and are such despised by God. And the Jew therefore guards himself against transgression. He's ashamed to transgress, to give klippus strength in life. That's what will stop you from doing an Avera, because you're going to think about it. Why would I give something existence, something that God simply despises? Thus, the fear of God enclosed within the observance of the prohibited commandments. For one's fear of God enables him to stand temptation and refrain from transgression. That's the question of the Levush. That's why the importance of here of the garment. If I garment myself with awe, I will never come to do bad. If I garment myself in chesed, I will always do good. It's the garment that I put on. That's why a person that has ego, a person that has anger, he's already worshiping Avodah Zarah. A person that has anger, why is he worshiping Avodah Zarah? The Gemara says a person that gets angry, you're worshiping Avodah Zarah. Why? I didn't do anything. I didn't bow down to idol. Putting on the garment of anger is already worshiping an idol. You have already put on a negative garment. Now, even if you didn't worship the idol, you're going to do something bad. So therefore, we should have two important garments in our life. The garment of Ava, Avas Hashem, garments of Avas Yisrael. Always wear a garment of love of the Eibishter. You're always going to do the right thing if you have that garment on. Always have the garment of awe on you. Always have the awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu upon yourself. Always wear the garment of awe. Because that will make sure, not that you're going to do an Aveda, you'll never do an Aveda. Because you're going to have the garment of awe. You'll never be able to even come to an Aveda, because the second that taiva, as the Alter Rebbe will explain later, that desire to do something that will come, your garment will automatically not let it in. Your garment will say, "What do you mean? I am in awe of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I am in awe of God." How is it possible even to think about this? You're going to push it away right away. How can a person who's in awe with God, who's in love with God, to even think that way? It's impossible. That's why the Alter Rebbe over here translates as a garment, because garment also protects a person. It's the armor for the person. Like a garment. You have to put on armor that something negative shouldn't hurt you. And that's the best bulletproof vest you can wear to make sure that chas v'shalom, nothing should affect you. Why? Because you have the garment of love of God. You have the garment of awe of God. And automatically these two garments are going to make sure that you do everything right and you never even come to do something that is wrong. Because the second you have that taiva, which is natural to do a negative thing, whether in thought, speech, and action, the garment, your awe of God, you're in the awe of God, will automatically stop you from doing anything negative. You now understand clearly how fear and love of God are related to the fulfillment of the commandments, and how midas are the root and life force in the performance of the commandments. How beautiful the Alter Rebbe does explain to you that how important it is to have Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, that should be the garments of your neshama. Your neshama should be garmented, not only because you have Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, that's a natural thing. That's you have Chesed and Gevura in the Koyches HaNefesh, but you have to garment them. You have to make sure that your Avas Hashem is your garment, that your love of God is your garment, and your awe of God is your garment. And that will be, because that's when your midas come into machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh. And the more your midas, your attribute of chesed and gevura come into your machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh, really a machshava, the more, because everything starts off in your thought. So the more you have these two entities, your chesed, your ava, and your yira, your awe of God, garmented your machshava, the more you would do everything right and nothing wrong. And that completes the Tanya of the day. What a beautiful Tanya of today. Today is the 29th and 30th day of the month, which is chapter 140 till the end of Tillim. We finished the Tillim today, chapter 140 till chapter 150, and you would do the chitas of the day. I want to wish you all a happy Hanukkah. Mitchum, tomorrow is Rosh Chodesh, so we're gonna start the chitas 15 minutes later at 8:15. The evening is longer, so we're gonna start at 8:15. The chitas of the day. I wish you all a happy Hanukkah, and Mitchum, I'll see you all tomorrow at 8 a.m. 8:15 a.m. 8:15. I'll continue the chitas of the day. Have a wonderful